Make sure the Gabbai has a l'chaim.
I don't have anything.
It's his busy season.
It's okay.
Beautiful.
That's it. All good. All good. No, Debbie.
Do one more? Chavra, one more song, then we're going to start the Mitzvah. See it, Zach. Got a l'chaim. Zach behind you. A good nerve Shabbos, a good nerve Yom Tiv, Zechus Baruch Hashem to be able to bring in. Now the truth is I was texting with Tzvi and Steve earlier. So tonight a little bit different also. There's a mitzvah midoraisa to eat on Erev Yom Kippur. So Baruch Hashem is already Erev Yom Kippur. So tonight, every other week it's just fressing. Right, so tonight Baruch Hashem. There's a mitzvah, an opportunity, Baruch Hashem, to perform a mitzvah daraisa. The Gemara says that whoever eats on the 9th of Tishrei Erev Yom Kippur, ma'ala alav hakasuv, it's as if a person has fasted on the 9th and 10th. Whatever the deeper meaning.
Coupled with the Pidyon HaBen.
Yeah, that's right, Baruch Hashem. Whatever the deeper meaning of it is, it is. But incredible zechus Baruch Hashem to be able to start the Kiddush of Yom Kippur together tonight. Erev Shabbos tonight, Steve, who are our sponsors?
There are a number of sponsors. I guess my meme worked. Eliyahu and Devorah Ramanfar for the safety and security of all the IDF soldiers, the safe return of all the hostages, and for peace and prosperity for all Jews in the New Year. Gemar Chasima Tova to all.
Amen. Shkoyach.
Susie Schoenfeld for Refuah Shlema for Tzvi Meir Lady Ben Saraleah, Yocheved Bas Sarayeta, Herschel Yisrael Ben Pescha Yento Rezel, and Mayor Avram Ben Feish.
Amen.
Zach and Corey Pomerantz, in honor of our heroic soldiers, and in the zechus of a swift return of our hostages, Gemar Chasima Tova to all.
Amen.
And Anonymous, wishing the Rav and Chevra a great New Year, and as a zechus for Refuah Shlema for Yosef Ben Riva Pasha.
Shkoyach. Special shkoyach again to all of our sponsors. A very special thank you to Reb Tzvi, really for the beautiful Erev Shabbos spread. Tremendous shkoyach. Thank you, Asher. Thank you to Reb Steve, who works really so hard. Mamish, beginning of the week already, with the shir, the sponsorships, lining everything up, and tremendous shkoyach tonight. To Reb Eli, to Reb Zevi for nothing. You could transform anything into Kodesh Kadashim with music, especially from these guys. Mamish, it turns everything into the Kohen Gadol, entering into the Kodesh HaKodashim. So Baruch Hashem, what a tremendous schos. So tonight, we're going to, Emeretz Hashem, prepare a little bit for the beautiful and holy Yom Tov of Yom Kippur to Piacezna. So what I actually wanted to do tonight is, in this packet, there's actually 3 different pieces, 3 short pieces. We'll get through everything, Emeretz Hashem, in a timely fashion. But I want to start actually with a piece from the Rebbe from Shabbos Shuvah. So this is Shabbos Shuvah 1940. Shabbos Shuvah 1940. So the Rebbe writes over here as follows. I'm sorry, Shabbos Shuvah 1939. This was the beginning in the ghetto. So we're not going to do this whole piece, but the Rebbe here highlights something incredibly amazing and incredibly just, I've said this a number of different times. Yom Kippur is such a fascinating anomaly, right? Why is it an anomaly? On one hand, it's the holiest day of the year, the most incredible day of the year for so many different reasons. What's the great challenge of Yom Kippur? It's the
holiest day of the year.
It's the holiest day of the year. Good. Let's see it. But Pashas, what's the challenge of Yom Kippur? It's fast day. And therefore what? I'll say, isn't it an incredible thing that the truth is Yom Kippur is the sleepiest day of the year? Right? I always find something amazing because I have a different view of these kinds of things. To me, it's okay. That we're a little groggy by the drasha before Yisker. Okay, it's mid-morning. What's always shocking to me a little bit is like the nodding off during Kol Nidre. Right? So that to me is always always, no matter, I've been in the Rabbanos a very long time, almost 25 years, Kanai Nahara. And the one thing that always not on a personal, just like trying to like wrap my head around it is like literally like the nod, it's 20 minutes into Yom Kippur. It's 20 minutes. You just had a meal. So it's not hunger. Granted, this week it's a little bit more complicated because it's Shabbos. Right? So we're working a whole week and we're going into Yom Kippur. But this idea that, and it's the whole Yom Kippur, it's fascinating, the holiest day of the year. And for most people, when do people usually really like wake up and get into it? Ne'ilah, right? Ne'ilah. No, not when it's over. Chas v'shalom. Right? Ne'ilah. Right? Ne'ilah is really fascinating, right? When it's over. Seriously, certain things you don't say out loud, by the way. Right? Certain things think to yourself, don't say them out loud. I'm going to sound like your wife now, right? Say it to yourself, don't say it out loud. Ne'ilah, it's fascinating, right? So what happens? Finally, I get into it, and there's an hour left. And I've often found that Yom Kippur is this very frustrating experience that I want to tap into it. Like, I want to feel it. And I recognize most of us, no one's going to feel it the whole day, right? We're human beings. So we're not eating, we're not drinking, we're on our feet, we're in shul the whole day. So of course, again, I'm going to get tired. And there are definitely going to be times that I space out or that I wander. But like big adol, like in a general sense, I want to feel it. I want to tap into the energy of it. And I want to be able to avail myself of the incredible koach of this day. Because this day, I will say, just understand what happens on Yom Kippur. You know, in Yom Kippur, the Torah says, Ki bayom hazeh yichaper aleichem l'tar eschem. Yom Kippur has two primary components. Kapara, which we'll call atonement or forgiveness, and tara, purity. And Rabbi Soloveitchik writes, he says that chet, every time I commit an avera, chet always brings with it two components. Every chet brings with it onesh. There's always a punishment. Every sin has a punishment. It's very important to understand. Right? There's reward and punishment in this world. So every single avera has a punishment. It doesn't matter. Big avera, small avera, serious avera, not so serious avera. Every avera has a punishment. Every avera also causes tumah, causes a certain level of spiritual impurity. What's the power of Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur erases it all. It takes it all the way. Kapara takes away the onshin, takes away the punishments. Tara takes away the tumah. So Yom Kippur is this total purging, this total cleanliness. That and literally, again, I just have to figure out a way just to somehow like sync myself with the like lahavdil, like you know, like when you get like a rental car, right? You get a rental car and like you have to pair your phone. Right? You have to pair your phone. So what happens? You know, it's sitting there. So what happens in that very beautiful moment between man and automobile, right? My entire life, first off, the last guy forgot to erase his settings, right? I'm listening to rap music, you know, for the first 20 minutes, but okay. Believing that aside, what? Well, then you get into it a little bit. I'm just saying, you know, once it's on, I'm saying like, I went to high school, so I'm just saying, you know, like, so like there's that incredible moment of syncing, you know, where like man and auto, like my life, right, is now getting onto this car, so that now however long I'm using it, Baruch Hashem, my contacts are there, my music is there, everything is there. And it's I've always it's such an incredible metaphor because there's so many things in life that we want to sync with. Because once I sync with something, then by definition, like we're synced. We're synced. You know, Kippur is one of those days, like I want to sync with the day. I want to somehow just tap in. I know I'm not going to be davening with kavanah the entire day, right? Let's accept certain I mean, I shouldn't say that. I'm always speaking for myself. I know me. I'm not going to be davening with kavanah the entire day. I'm hoping to find moments, periods, hopefully larger swaths than last year. But I know that there are going to be moments where my mind is wandering. But what I'm trying to figure out is just how do I sink in so that even in SYNC, how do I sink in so that this way, again, even when I'm a little bit disconnected, I'm still synced. You know, I'm still there. And that's part of the great challenge of this day. And so much of what we need to do is kind of put ourselves, like so many things in life. If you want to be successful in anything, right? If you want to be successful in the business meeting, you can't play it by ear. Like I don't know, I'm not a businessman, but I would assume you have to prepare. Right, whatever you want to be successful in life. You're a teacher, you have to prepare. You're a lawyer, you're presenting to the court, you have to prepare. You're an accountant, you have to prepare. You can't wing it. Ruchnius is no different. If I want to sink into Yom Kippur, somehow I have to lay the groundwork ahead of time. So that's the Piacezna. That's what our Rebbe is going to help us do. Just to help us focus ourselves, get ourselves in the right headspace, get ourselves in the right direction, so that Emir Hashem, I want to enter into Yom Kippur already tonight a little bit, right? With the food and with the l'chaims, right? I want to enter into Erev Yom Kippur or I want to enter into Yom Kippur on Erev Yom Kippur. I want to sink myself into this Yom Tov a little bit in the right mindset, so that way tomorrow night, when those words, those holy words of Kol Nidre, bring upon us a beautiful tidal wave of holiness, I'm ready for it. And more importantly, I know what to do with it and how I want to maximize my day. So take a look on the first page. The first page is the one that says Shabbos Shuvah on it. So the Rebbe says as follows. He says, so this was Shabbos Shuvah, 1939 in the Geddah. So the Rebbe says as follows. And Rebbe said, this is a beautiful piece. Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekayim is kol HaTorah ubema mekayim gam HaTshuvah. So the Piacezna says we have a concept, and over here you see quotes from the Medrash and from the Yerushalmi, that the Ribono Shel Olam keeps the entire Torah. That Kiviyachol, the same way that we have 613 mitzvos, the Ribono Shel Olam keeps the Torah as well. Kadosh Baruch Hu keeps the mitzvos. Now, obviously, it's metaphorical and it's anthropomorphic, but it's nevertheless a real concept. That the same kind of body of law that we have, that we observe here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu observes of Halta. So, for example, just give an example of this, right? The Gemara goes ahead and brings down. The Gemara says that, for example, the Ribbon Shalom wears tefillin. But whereas in the tefillin that we wear, the Parshios speak about the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the tefillin of the Ribbon Shalom, the Parshios speak about Mika Amcha Yisrael, the greatness of Klal Yisrael. So I wear tefillin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wears tefillin. In the footnote over here, which we're not going to do, but you'll look at it on your own, the Gemara brings down...
Before you talk about sinking, how do you...
Oh, that's what we're going to try to figure out. Yeah, okay. That's what we're going to try to do. You didn't miss it. I didn't say it. We're trying to figure out, to lay a framework for how you sink. So, in number one, in the footnote over here, so it happens to be, he brings down a whole Gemara that discusses this concept as well. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu keeps mitzvahs. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the Torah Kiviyachol, Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Klal Yisrael, all one entity. The Ribbon Shalom, I put on tefillin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts on tefillin. The Gemara down here says, I keep Shabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu keeps Shabbos. Whatever mitzvah we keep, HaKadosh Baruch Hu keeps also. Says the Piacezna. Listen to this idea. If that's true, then we have a concept of tshuva. When it comes to tshuva, how does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do tshuva? What does tshuva look like by the Ribono Shel Olam? And I both said, so I have to understand, I'm often reticent to do Eish Kodesh at this year, because obviously this is the section of Eish Kodesh. Eish Kodesh is a very heavy sefer, because every piece of Torah occurs against the backdrop of just horrific, barbaric events. So there's a heaviness with everything. So the piece itself is a very heavy piece. We're only going to extrapolate from the first part. But you can understand what the Rebbe is asking over here. I know when I do something wrong that I have to do tshuva. So yet we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu has every mitzvah. Does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do tshuva? All right, or how does he do tshuva? Second paragraph.
Assume he doesn't need to.
I'm sorry?
Assume he doesn't need to. Why would you assume that?
Or is that more metaphorical?
Let's see. Kishav min hara shechas v'chalil l'shalach li'amo Yisrael. O Amr Lasos, who to Shuvasa Kiviyachol. So Piacezna says, I'll answer you. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and literally stops from visiting the evil that he has sent upon his people, right? Either that he was going to send or he didn't send, or he did send and he stops. So he says, who Shuvasa Kiviyachol. Shabbos says, isn't that incredible? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu stood poised to do something to us, Kishashav min hara shechas v'chalila shalach li'amo Yisrael o amar lasos. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu did something hurtful or bad to us, and then he stops doing it, or for that matter, HaKadosh Baruch Hu planned on doing something hurtful or terrible, and then he didn't do it, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tshuva. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tshuva. Kimosh Amar HaKosov, Vayinachim Hashem al hara asher diber lasos liamo. By Chayta Egel, by the sin of the golden calf, what happens? HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael. And what happened? Vayinochim, he didn't. Now the Piacezna says, Ma'u Vayinochim. What does Vayinochim mean? It says, Kivyachol, Charata Shehi Reishis HaTshuva. Now I will say it's interesting because we often translate the word Vayinochim, Nechama, as consolation. But remember again, Rashi already in the beginning of Bereshis says that's not the real, or that's not the translation in this context. Rashi says by Adam, by mankind. After mankind went down its downward spiral, so the pasuk says, "Vayinochim." Hashem had nechama that He created man. So Rashi says, what does it mean He had nechama that He created man? So Rashi says, nechama means a change of perspective. That Hakadosh Baruch Hu thought that it was a good idea to create man. Then he had changed of perspective. He said, it's not good to create man. That's when He brought the Mabul. So therefore, in the Piacezna says, "Vayinochim Hashem al hara asher dibar lasos yamo," means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to punish us in a terrible way for the sin of the golden calf, and then the Ribono Shel Olam changed His mind. He changed, whatever that means, that God changes His mind, He changed His mind. Ma vayinachim, so what does He changed His mind? Kivyachol, charata shehi reishes hatshuva. That's charata. The first step of tshuva is remorse. So you see over here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does tshuva. How does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do tshuva? So Piacezna says, either He was ready to do something terrible to us, and He changed His mind. So He, so to speak, did tshuva, or He was doing something terrible, and then He stopped doing it to us. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu does tshuva. Aval ki teshuva, so He rak al hara asher naaseh, o amar lasos, as nisharim Yisrael tamid chas v'chalila ba'otza amatza v'akasha, ki rak al hara she'amar lahosif chas v'chalila, hischaret v'shav. V'nisharim kimo kodem hatzara shagam kim hayinu nemuchim. Shabbos says this is profound. Says the Piacezna like this. Shabbos says, to just understand what's happening over here. So first of all, the Piacezna advancing this concept that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does tshuva, which by itself is an incredible idea. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu does tshuva. How does Hashem do tshuva? One of two ways. He's hurting us and He's punishing us, and He stops. That's one way He does tshuva. Or He's about to do something terrible and He changes His mind and He doesn't. That's tshuva. Says the Piacezna, here's the problem. In both of those cases, while it's true that either the bad thing will no longer continue, or the bad thing that was going to happen ultimately again will not come to fruition, what that tshuva doesn't do is it doesn't address any pre-existing difficulties that were already there. Right? In other words, so in the Ribono, in this model of tshuva, what the Piacezna is saying is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is His tshuva is what we call like mikanu lahaba, from here going forward. But here's the problem: what about the situation that already existed before the tshuva moment? So, for example, let's say HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Piacezna's model was punishing us, and then Kiviyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides to do quote unquote tshuva, and as a result of divine tshuva, He stops punishing us. So beautiful. So there's no more punishment going forward. What about the damage that's occurred up until this point? What about that? So divine tshuva helps from this point going forward. But what about retrospective tshuva? What about, or I should say, what about retrospectively? What about looking back? What about all of that damage up until now? What happens there? Go to the left-hand column where it says page Tesvav. V'zeh shebetehillim shuva Hashem ad Mosai v'inachim alavadecha savanu baboker chastecha unranuna v'nismecha b'chol yameinu mispalalim shuva Hashem kivyachol aseh tshuva banu ad Mosai v'inachim alavadecha ad Mosai tehei kol tshuva rak b'hinachim alavadecha ala roos vatzoros shematzirim osanu she'az nisharim shuv ba'osa matzav hanamoch savanu baboker. I'm just going to read it and I'm going to translate. Savanu baboker hasdecha unranina v'nismecha b'chol yameinu shebazeh teshuvasa kiviyachol. So Piacezna says something that's quoting this pasuk in Tehillim, and it's so beautiful. We see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam. This is incredible. So listen to this idea. We see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Please don't just do a partial tshuva. Partial tshuva is remedying the situation from this point going forward. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if that's all you're going to do, that's an incomplete tshuva. Why? Because what about the tsaris? What about the state of disrepair that existed beforehand? What's going to happen with that? To which David HaMelech says in Tehillim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your tshuva is only going to be complete. Savanu baboker chasdecha, only when literally we are satiated in the morning from your kindness, unaranina v'nismecha bechol yamenu, and we are perpetually happy. Meaning what David HaMelech is saying is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your tshuva is not enough if all you're doing is taking away the pain from this point going forward. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you want to be a Baal tshuva gimura, then what? Then there has to be some retrospective tshuva as well. And you have to figure out how to take away all of the suffering. You have to figure out how to take away all of the pre-existing pain and return us or bring us to a state of true tranquility. And I will say, this is a profound theological piece as well. And you can understand, by the way, if you just understand what's happening over here, just from even the historical perspective, what the Piacezna is saying is, Ribono Shalom, even if you were to bring our suffering to a stop right now, there is so much collateral damage that has already occurred that even if the suffering were to stop in this moment, what about all of the breakage? What about just all of the catastrophic realities up until what happens there? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you cannot content yourself with doing tshuva just mikanu lahaba from now going forward. But Ribono Shel Olam, for you to be a true Baal tshuva, you have to fix the past damage as well. Now that doesn't mean going back in time, but you can't just return us to a state of a stoppage of aggression, right? A stoppage of punishment. You have to go ahead and reset things so that once again as a klal, we are back in a state of shalom. We are back in a state of goodness. We are back in a state of wholeness. An incredibly profound idea. It is not enough to stop, so to speak, quote unquote, the chait from this point going forward. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have an obligation to remedy things going back as well. Now, why is this important for us? So look at what Rabbi says, V'gam anu tzrichen lasos tshuva kegonzu. Shabbos said the point that I really want to highlight from here is not as much what the Piacezna says about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but what he uses the Ribono Shel Olam's model to establish a model of tshuva for us. Look what he writes. V'gam anu tzrichen lasos tshuva kegonzu. We have to do tshuva in the same way. Ki kisha ish shav rak al chet bilvad, asher nichshol chas v'chalil b'machshava dibur ma'isa, az nishar shuv b'matzav ha'kodim shay kodim ha'chet, shegam kein lo haya mibnei aliyah, right? B'nei machshavato, b'nei aliyah, rak shechet hazeh lo haya lo. So Rabbi say, this to me, this one paragraph changed my life. Look what the Rebbe says. We sometimes have a disconnect from tshuva, right? You think, what is tshuva? So tshuva, I'm doing tshuva for a particular avera, right? What's my goal? My goal is to go ahead and address a particular sin. Whatever, choose your sin, right? Insert your sin here. My avoda of tshuva is to do tshuva for a particular sin. And now what's my goal? My goal is to get myself back to the point before the sin. Right, to the point before the sin. Here's the problem. What's the problem with getting back to the point before the sin? So let's say it's a Thursday, right? So Thursday afternoon, I committed a big avera. So now I'm going to do tshuva. And what's my tshuva? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to do tshuva for this avera. I want to get myself back to Thursday afternoon before the sin. What's the problem with that? What's the problem?
Not fortified to withstand it again.
Right, the problem with that is, on Thursday afternoon before the sin, obviously, I wasn't in a good spiritual place. What's the proof to that? I sinned. Right? In other words, listen, we've spoken about this many times. Rabbi Salvation writes about this as well, that sin doesn't just pop up. Right? Sin doesn't just pop, nothing in your life pops up. Even this is the season, right? Even the pop-up sukkah. You ever see those little pop-up sukkahs? Right? It's mamish, it's false advertising. They do not just pop up. They do not just pop up. Why? Because nothing in life just pops up. Right? Everything has a haschala. Everything has a shoresh. Everything starts somewhere. So when I commit an avera, it's not the pshat that poof, an avera occurred. I will say that we've spoken about this so many times that one of the most instructive things, and really a prerequisite for tshuva, is if I'm really going to be about tshuva and I really want to address averos, what I need to do is like this. What's the avera? Let's start with one simple avera. We're not going to speak out averos right now, right? A simple one. It's like everyday one. One that you're good at. Again, there are things I dabble in and things that I'm really hardcore. So again, if I think about an avera that I do, so we'll say it's a fascinating exercise. Okay, so think about it now. It's Thursday afternoon. I did the avera. A fascinating exercise is trace back your steps. How did I get there? And what's fascinating to see is, rarely is it like, oh, I just walked into the room and I'm like, an Aveira. But rather, again, it's fascinating that you could trace back your steps. And a lot of times it's to relatively innocuous things, but just things that weren't good for me at that moment. Not things that I really should be doing or really should be involved in. And then A led to B, and B led to C, and C led to D, and D. And a lot of those steps are not per se Averidic, right? They're not bad. They're just not helpful. And step after step after step, and suddenly I get to it. Rabbi Soloveitcher calls the chait, the sin is called the chait. The pathway to sin is called derech chotim. There's always a pathway that leads to sin. So the Piacezna says something amazing. He says, if I just do tshuva, and my entire avoda is just to get back to Thursday afternoon before I sin, I don't want to go back to Thursday afternoon before I sin. That's not going to help me. Because obviously, Thursday afternoon, in the 5 minutes before I sin, obviously I wasn't in the right spiritual headspace. Because if I was, then I wouldn't have gotten myself into this trouble to begin with. So what does tshuva require? We'll say, this is such a different way of looking at tshuva. We get so often focused on the behavior. Right? I'm arrogant. Right? I'm arrogant. So I'm focusing on a midah. That's part of the avodah, but I have to take it a step. So what's my goal? To get back to before I was arrogant? But before I was arrogant, obviously I became arrogant, which means that in the moment before I fell prey to arrogance, there was something broken inside of me that allowed me to fail in this way. So to get myself back to the moment before the chait, it's actually not helpful. It's actually not helpful. So where do I need to get myself? And where do I need to get myself back to? He says, this is incredible. He says, "V'ikarat tshuva." So we'll say, where am I trying to get back to? Where am I trying? And both say, you understand how he compares it to Chassidus Chaburah? So if all you're going to do is do tshuva to stop punishing us, so you're either going to change your mind and not punish us, or you've been punishing us and you're going to stop punishing us. That's nice, right? So therefore, nothing bad is going to happen going forward. But what about all the stuff up until now? So if I'm going to go out and do tshuva, and my goal is to get back to the state right before I sinned, how does that help me? How does that help me, given the fact that I'm clearly compromised in that moment? So what is the avodah of tshuva? Rabbi say this is so beautiful. He says, "Ve'ikra tshuva, hishuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha." So therefore, the Piacezna says it's simple. You're not returning back to a moment before the sin. You know, even though in Shabbos Shuvah we spoke about it, again, returning back to the state of Adam Arishon before the Chait. Piacezna says that's not even what you're doing. You know what Shuvah is? Shuvah is I'm returning to Hashem. I'm returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'lachein tzrichin leimor l'chazos ki kashalta ba'avonecha v'techshaf shedai l'cha loshuv al hachatoim bilbad lachein masir ha'novi shetashuv laleches ad Hashem Elokecha v'tisromim kulach b'kedusha tara v'avod al Hashem. So we'll say, how beautiful is this? The avod of tshuva is not a return to me. It's not a return to the state before I sinned. It's not even like Rav Kook said, right? Or like the Maharal said about a return to the state of Adam Arishon before he sinned. Says the Piacezna, tshuva is a return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because whatever state I returned to back in my previous life, I was compromised and weak in some way. So I don't want to go back to that. Instead, what I want to do is I want to go back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha ki kashalta ba'avonecha. Because I stumbled over my sins, the return is not to an earlier state of me. The return is to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because it's only if I find a way to come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that suddenly again all of those weaknesses could be bolstered and somehow all of those deficiencies could be rebuilt. I'll say, it's just a different way to look at Shuvah. What am I returning to? And the Piacezna says the only way to fix the past is not by returning to an earlier version of yourself. Because the truth is, if I'm honest, I will say, any earlier version of myself is flawed. Is flawed. 1.0 was flawed. 2.0 fixed some of the bugs, but it was still flawed. 3.0, again, had new bugs. The old ones were fixed, but then the first ones came back, right? 7.0 was totally messed up, right? And then and so on and so forth. Like, there are multiple different versions of me, and each version has some wonderful things and some real stuff that does not work. So, which version do I want to go back to? And therefore the Piacezna says, no, you're not going back to you. You're going back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm going back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. Because otherwise, if all I'm doing is going back to me before the sin, then I'm just heading back to another flawed point in my life. But if I make my way back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then by definition I'm going back to infinity. Then I'm going back to flawlessness. Then I'm going back to something perfect. And I will say, if we think about it, this is such a tremendous way to frame for ourselves what are we trying to accomplish on Yom Kippur. Right? Because so often Yom Kippur is overwhelming in so many different ways, both in the length of, right? You know what happens, if you make even though it's so funny, right? How interesting it is that it's not like it's our first Yom Kippur, so we know exactly how long everything is, but yet cannot resist the temptation to see how many pages are left in Ma'ariv, right? And then what happens? So, right, and then but then there's good news because it's divided by 2 because ours calls Hebrew English, right? So, it's not 150 pages, 75 pages. Oh, but 75 pages, right? And that's right. But there's some piyutim, so we may take that out. But he sings this, the Chazan sings this 14 times. He says that, and it's so funny. I'm like, hello, the good news is no new pages, right? No new pages, right? It's the same. And I'll say, but we just get so lost, and instead, what I just have to remind myself is, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm going back to Hashem. That's what I'm doing. I will say the entirety of Yom Kippur, the entirety of Tshuva, is Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. I'm not going back to myself. I'm not going back to a state before the sin. I'm not going back to Adam HaRishon. I'm not going back to an earlier me. I'm going back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because it's only through a return to Hashem that some way, somehow, I have the ability to get this right. Because the truth is, I'm flawed. So any previous me that I'm going back to is flawed as well. But if I somehow make it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then ultimately, again, that's how I find some level of shleimus in this world. But let me play one more piece because I know we're out of time. So I'll just skip for a moment. Actually, I'm not going to skip. Take a look at the second page. I'm just going to do it very quickly. Take a look at the second page. Sav V'Zera. So we'll say this is incredible. This is a little bit ahead of where we are. But if you look in Lamed Beis and Sav V'Zera, he says, Harbe Yosef, look what he writes. Harbe Yosef Yakel, lo la'adam lilmod shanim kamos ba'asmada, af v'stagif b'chol kocho, me'asher la'avod as Hashem yom echad be'echius tova va'amitis gam l'fi asagaso. Essentially, the Piacezna says, it is easier to learn Torah in depth for many, many, many years, right? Hours upon hours each day, than it is to really serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a meaningful and fulfilling way for one moment. By the way, this is not a chiddush. We know that, right? We can knock out Gemaras, we can knock out Torah, absolutely no problem. But to really serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Isn't it incredible? Like, think about it. If Yom Kippur was a Yom Yun, right? If Yom Kippur was a Daf Yomi marathon, right? Imagine for a moment, right? It's a Daf Yomi marathon. How would you feel about that? How would you feel? Let's go, right? I mean, that'd be great. I mean, obviously no coffee, right? But Lamaisa, like, I could actually, like, I could sink my teeth into that, like, especially if we're learning the right kind of Gemaras, I could sink my teeth into that. Why? Because I will say, it's very simple. Torah stimulates me on many different levels. It stimulates my mind, right? It stimulates the heart. It stimulates the Torah is very stimulating. So if the Piacezna says to learn stark and to learn a lot and to learn like a volume, that's actually not complicated. And most of us, again, people have a greater attention span, a lesser attention span, okay. But most of us can figure out a way to master this in some way, shape, or form. But the Piacezna says, but to really serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu one day in real measure, so that's, he says, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. It is so difficult for us to even get one good day of being a servant of Hashem. I will say, by the way, it's a very profound idea, especially since we're coming up to a day where the entire day, the essence is to be an Eved Hashem. Yom Kippur is all about turning myself into a servant of Hashem. And the Piacezna says, he's not talking about Yom Kippur. He's just talking about just stam life. Torah, I can knock that out. I could do every single yomi under the sun, no problem. Enjoy it. Won't remember a word, but I could get it all done. Right? I could do that. Right? But to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to really serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be an Oved Hashem one day, It's really difficult. He says, Avol, al nis yayish, don't despair. Ve'adinu lo narpa, ki avol dihi avodaseinu, v'yiyasenu im teshukasenu, matras chayinu, v'osam el HaKadosh nakdish. Piacezna says, we'll say sometimes, how do you know what your avodah in life is? It's very important to you. How do you know what your avodah in life is? Whatever is most difficult for you, that is your avodah. You see, people make the mistake, they're thinking that the goal in life is play to your strengths, right? Whatever you're good at, like, do that. No. Whatever you're good at, that's a gift from Hashem. Whatever you're good at, by the way, you didn't do that. Whatever you're good at, that's usually a God-given talent. It's kind of like a photographic memory, right? No one gets a shkoyach for having a photographic memory. Why? You must have worked so hard on that. No, you didn't, right? God gave that to you. God gave that to you, right? So generally, the stuff that you're good at in life, those are skill sets that the Ribono Shel Olam programmed you with. Now, you have to hone them, you have to work on them, but they're God-given. So what's my avodah? My avodah is to figure out the stuff that is really difficult for me. And chances are, the Arizal says, if a person wants to know what their avodah is in life, he says, the thing you struggle with most is the very reason you were put on this world. Which I will say, if you notice, by the way, I think, don't nod your head in agreement or disagreement. We'll have total. Most of us don't struggle with 5 averas. We struggle with 1 avera. There's that 1 avera that I keep doing over and over and over. And I have a good stretch of, we'll call it the avera sobriety, right? And a good stretch where I'm doing, and then I relapse. And years could go by, and I do, and like it's this, and that sometimes that 1 avera like manifests itself in a couple of different ways. But it's fascinating, right? You don't usually meet people who are like, these 5 things are my constant, daily, ongoing struggle. It's usually, this thing is my constant, ongoing life struggle. The Arizal says, here's the good news. The bad news is, that's your life struggle. The good news is, that is why you are here in the world. That struggle, that's your avodah. People want to know, if only I was born with a post-it note on my forehead to know what I'm supposed to do in this world. We are born with a post-it note on our forehead. The thing you struggle most, that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu put you here in this world. Right? Some people don't know how to create normal, healthy relationships. Their avodah is to go ahead and create normal, healthy relationships. Some people cannot control their desires, their wants, their lusts, their desires. My avodah in life is to rein that in. Everybody with what they struggle with most, that is their avodah. Says the Piacezna. So we all seem to have a central avodah, which is to how to become Avdei Hashem. So we'll say, I just want to point out today something amazing. 2, not contradictory pieces from the Piacezna, but a shtickle contradiction. The same Rebbe, right? So in Sav V'Zeros, which is written earlier, in Sav V'Zeros, the Rebbe says, the hardest thing in the world is to find your way back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I can learn Kol HaTorah Kula, I can learn, and I can do that, and I love that, and it's fantastic. But to have one day where I'm really connected to Hashem, to have one day of Shuvah, Ad Hashem Elokecha, of real connection in terms of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so difficult. And what does he say in Eish Kodesh? What is the entire avodah? What is the entire avodah of tshuva? The entire avodah is coming back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the entire avodah of Yom Kippur is coming back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which the Piacezna in Sav V'Zeru says is the hardest thing to do in the world. So now I'm stuck. And already 6 minutes over. I'm going 3 more minutes, and then we're stopping. And I held up 4. But I'm saying, right, we're going 3 more minutes, and we're stopping. So how do I reconcile this? You hear? See, no more cholent. I think it sits in people and causes drowsiness. There's a lot of, it's like a fog. It's like a fog of fatigue over here. You know what? Next week, vegetarian cholent. Let's see what you do then. Okay, Chavra. That's it. Right? Salad next week for all of you, right? So again, you understand what a profound theological issue this is. Again, in Eish Kodesh, the entire avoda is Shuva Ad Hashem Elokecha. Shuva doesn't mean going back to an earlier version of yourself. Tshuva means going back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means being an Oved Hashem, an Eved Hashem, connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzav V'Zeros, the Piacezna says, I can learn Kol HaTorah Kula easier than it is to be an Oved Hashem for one day. So how do I reconcile that? So I will say, so now, last piece. I'm going to do this outside because of time. No, I'm going to do it inside. Take a look on the last page. So I will say, it's actually a beautiful, beautiful sefer that I picked up in Eretz Yisrael a number of years ago. And the title is Mashalim Liyamim Norai. It's beautiful. It's just a whole bunch of Mashalim, right? Dubna Magid, other Magidim. So I will say, so listen to this top piece of Shmelka of Nikolsburg. Shmelka of Nikolsburg says the following mashal. He says, what does it mean? This is incredible. He asked an interesting question. He says, what does it mean, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha? Shouldn't it be Shuva Yisrael, what? El Hashem Elokecha. Return Klal Yisrael to. Ad means what? Ad means what? Until. So what's the ad? So I'll say, this is beautiful. Let me tell you the mashal outside. Writes the Rebbe like this. He says, Adam Yotzei Mibeis B'Yom Shav. So listen to this. You have a person, we'll call him Ruvain. And Ruvain needs to travel from point A to point B. It's an incredibly hot day. So Ruvain sets out, and it's a decent distance between point A and point B. So the Rebbe says like this. Ruvain sets out, and the sun is beating down on him, sweltering. If Ruvain says, okay, you know what? That's it. I'm going. I'm going to get from point A to point B. No turning back. Let's go. Says Shmelka of Nikolsburg, what's going to end up happening? What's going to end up happening is that Halach L'maisa is going to burn out somewhere in the middle of the journey. Right? The sun is going to be down on him, he's going to get dehydrated, he's going to get sick, he's going to this, and at some point in time, he's going to turn back around. So says the Rebbe, what's the better eitzah? Reuven starts out, and instead of Reuven says, you know what? I'm not going to point B. I'm not going to city B. But you know what? There's a tree over there. Let me get over there. Let me go over there. Okay? And then I'll reassess. Gets to the tree, right? Gets to the tree. Then you know what? A little bit further in distance, he sees a wall. You know what? Let me get over to the wall over there. Right? Let me see what's going on once I get there. Gets to the wall. And slowly but surely what he does is he takes a long journey from city A to city B and breaks it up into much smaller increments. And suddenly again, Reuven is able to make it from point A to point B because he didn't try to get there in one journey. Instead, what he did is he broke up that longer journey into smaller, digestible pieces. I'll go to here, and again, without any promise of where I'm going to get after that, but let me get to here, and then I get to there, okay, I can make it to here, and then after that, I can make it to this, and then after that, I can make it to this. Look at the last paragraph. He says, V'zeh shneimar, Shuva Yisrael. So the Rebbe says like this. The avoda, of course, is that we want to get back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shuva Yisrael, we want to come back to Hashem. Like the Piacezna said, the entire avoda of Shuvah is to get back to the Ribbon Shalom. But how do I do that? Keitzad, how do I do it? Hatshuva hi ad. Listen to this. Saman la'atzmecha mataros krovos, niros la'ayin rak ad sham. Do you know why, says Shmelka of Nikolsburg, do you know why often we don't make it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Do you know why? Do you know why? Because what I say to myself is, okay, I'm here, and let's go. I'm getting back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's go. What's the problem? I'm here, and the Rebbe Shalom is all the way over there. So what happens? I start running, sprinting, and by the way, I haven't run for years, right? So I'm all excited, and then about 2 minutes in, I'm out of breath, right? And then again, it's a little hot, it's a little cold, a little bit tired, and this, that. And what ends up happening is 9.9 out of 10 times, I just give up because the journey is too long. So instead, says the Navi, Shuva Yisrael, how do you do it? Ad. Ad means until. Don't try to go directly back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in one journey. Set smaller journeys for yourself. Create small journeys. Create individual smaller journeys. Ad here, I'll go up until here. Okay, then you get there. Now I'm going to go up until here. Smaller individual journeys. And then the composite of those smaller individual journeys is Hashem Elokecha. So Shuva Yisrael. How do you get back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Ad. Don't try to get from yourself to Hashem just that once, but rather again, ad. Break the long journey up into smaller incremental pieces of personalistic growth. Create multiple personal journeys. And then at the end, you'll make it to Hashem Elokecha. So we'll say, if we bring this all together, the Rebbe is teaching us something incredible. The Piacezna is teaching us something incredible. That our entire avoda of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the one day. Yom Kippur is the day where the day, interestingly enough, I will say, it's not Torah. Isn't that fascinating, right? Normally Torah is our entire life. The avoda of Yom Kippur is not Torah. The avoda of Yom Kippur is to get back to Hashem. But how do I do that? Piacezna says it's so hard. And I will say, now, by the way, even though in Sav Zeruz, the Piacezna doesn't say why it's so hard. But now I understand why it is. Why is it so hard? Because the Shmelk of Nikolsburg told me, why is it so hard? Because it's a really long journey. It's a really long journey. And what happens on really long journeys? What happens? People generally tend to fatigue out. We just fatigue out. And so Shmelk of Nikolsburg says, okay, who told you have to take the journey at once? Break it up into smaller pieces. And I will say, maybe that's our avodah of Yom Kippur. And maybe the avodah of Yom Kippur is not even necessarily to get all the way back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the avodah of Yom Kippur is to figure out the series of smaller steps I need to take in order to get there. How do you know if you've had... And I will say, by the way, I want to tell you something. I think this is why... You ever notice that like you can have the most incredible Yom Kippur, and how long does it last? How long does it last? Minutes? That's sad. I'm sorry for that, right? I'm going to say usually I would give it like a day or two, right? Usually it's like when you have like the first major fight when putting up the sukkah, right? Usually it's like you yell at someone or say something nice to someone, right? Or do something. Then it's like everything I worked on for the last 2 weeks is out the window, right? And usually it's someone I'm related to also, so then it's even worse, right? So usually it doesn't last long. And I will say, interesting, the reason why it doesn't last for long is because Yom Kippur, we're often going from like 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, right? So like I'm on fire, I'm great. But then the truth is, like, there's no sustainable journey in that. So Yom Kippur's over, I make Havdalah, and like, I don't even know what to do with myself. I don't know, where do I plug this into? What do I do with all of this? And that's what the Piacezna Shakal Nikolsburg said. I will say, you know what the avodah of Yom Kippur is? And I think that avodah, it starts even tonight, it starts even tomorrow, Erev Yom Kippur, is to create your ad plan. What is your ad plan? Not how are you getting back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but what are the intermediary steps that I need to take to get back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And I will say, that is a tremendous thing to think about. What are the intermediate steps? Because that requires a significant dose of introspection and real contemplation about where I am. Right? What do I have to do about my davening? What do I have to do about my learning? What do I have to do about my marriage? What do I have to do about my kids? What do I have to do about my friends? What do I have to do about my tzedakah? What do I have to do about chesed? Like I have to look at almost every area. What do I have to do about my taivas? Like I have to look at every area of my life and figure out what do I need to do? What are the odd steps that I need to take in all of these areas in order to get back to Hashem Elokech? And that's what I will say. I want to tell you, I'm giving you permission to have your mind wander during davening on Yom Kippur. Even during the drasha, right? Wander away. But let it wander to the right places. In other words, let it wander to, okay, so like, what is the journey I'm going to take? Like, what is it? How am I getting back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Because, you could have a beautiful and uplifting and inspiring Yom Kippur, and then it's over, and you have no idea where to plug it in, so it just peters out, and you're right back where you started just a day or two later. But if I use Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur and Yom Kippur to make it an odd experience, I mean, let me get to the tree. What's the tree? Then let me get to the wall. And then let me get to the mound. And then let me get to the hill. And let me get to the waterfall. Let me get to the river. And again, slowly but surely, now I have all of these odd pieces lined up. The journey takes longer. But number one, it's sustainable. Number two, it's realizable. And number three, at the end of the day, it's accomplishable. I don't know if that's a word, but accomplishable. I can actually do it. And this is our avodah of Erev Yom Kippur, our avodah of Yom Kippur. To get back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but not in one fell swoop, not in one long initial journey, in multiple smaller odd journeys. If we could emerge from Yom Kippur with this plan, then Abosai, that is a day of resounding spiritual success. We should be Zocha Miras Hashem for a beautiful Yom Kippur. We should be Zocha Miras Hashem. And halabai, maybe there are some of us here that can make it back right to HaKadosh Baruch Hu 1, 2, 3. It's possible, definitely possible. But if you can't, now at least we have a plan. We should be Zocha Miras Hashem to walk into the Yom Kippur with a clear vision of what we want to accomplish. We should be Zocha Miras Hashem over the course of Yom Kippur to accomplish it. We should be Zocha Miras Hashem that HaKadosh Baruch Hu seals all of us in the Sefer HaChaim, in the Book of Life, together with our families, our community, with all of Klal Yisrael. We should be Zocha Miras Hashem that in the Zuchos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu seeing us do tshuva. If I could, I feel strange thing, but I could borrow the words of the Piacezna, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should do tshuva. HaKadosh Baruch Hu would also do tshuva and bring an end to our suffering, and bring an end to our difficulty, and bring home our hostages, and allow our soldiers to be successful, b'chol ma'aseh yadehem, and allow them, Emir Hashem, to come back to their families, b'shalom and b'karov, and give us a year of besoros tovos, and instead of us always being on the defense, we should be zochem, Emir Hashem, to be on the offense. And the same way that we have shown the world that Jews are no longer victims, but we are the victors, that we should be Zoche Emir Hashem to show the world what true heroism, sustained heroism looks like. We should be Zoche Emir Hashem to see a year where all the cries are cries of Mazel Tov. And all the tears are tears of joy. And in every single home, gatherings don't take place for Nichum Avelim. The gathering takes place for Shalom Zachars, for Sheva Brachas, for beautiful Shabbos meals. That there's a wave of achdus, continued achdus that washes over our people. And most of all, if we do tshuva, the Baruch Hu will do tshuva, and halavai, the Ribbon Shalom's tshuva will manifest itself in the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, the restoration of Am Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, and the Geula Shalema Bimhera B'Yameinu. Amen.
Marv in the main.